And as I said before the presentation, I will have some interesting facts about Venus, so the planet, and those facts were generated by ChatGPT. So the 10 first facts. Venus is a second planet from the Sun, and it's orbiting between Mercury and Earth. It has similar size to Earth. Venus is often called Earth's sister planet because it is similar in size and composition, and it has a diameter of about 12,000 kilometers, which is very close to ours diameter. It rotates backward, so its axis is in the opposite, moves in the opposite direction to most planets in our solar system, including Earth. This means that if we were standing on the surface of Venus, then we would see the sunrise in the west and set in the east. So this is interesting. It has thick atmosphere. It has a dense and unfortunately toxic atmosphere, which is composed mainly of carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid. Yes, please take your seats. Yes, and another fact is that this thick atmosphere traps heat, which leads to an extreme greenhouse effect and making Venus the hottest planet in our solar system. Yes, and also another fact, fifth one, is extreme temperatures. So the surface is incredibly high, reaching about 467 degrees Celsius. And this is hotter than the surface of Mercury, even though Venus is farther from the Sun. Venus has no moons or rings. Unlike many other planets in our solar system, Venus doesn't have any moons or rings. It has retrograde rotation, so Venus not only rotates backward on its axis, but it also rotates very slowly. It takes about 243 Earth days for Venus to complete one rotation, while it only takes about 225 Earth days to orbit the Sun. Another fact is that about volcanic activity. It means that Venus has many volcanic features, including large volcanic plains and thousands of volcanoes. And some scientists believe that Venus might still be volcanically active. And the last two facts are that it has lengthy day-night cycle. A day on Venus, so one rotation on its axis, is longer than a year on Venus, one orbit around the Sun. A day on Venus lasts about 170 Earth days, while a year is only about 225 Earth days. And the last one probably is the most known, that it is named after the Roman goddess of love. And Venus was the goddess of love and beauty, and it is sometimes referred to as the evening star when it appears in the western sky after sunset, and the morning star when it appears in the eastern sky before sunrise. I hope that those facts were generated correctly, so that the ChatGPT was correct. You can double check it. And now, allow me to introduce our next speaker, Michał Węgrzyn. Michał is a Scrum Master with psychological background. His Agile journey started in a healthcare software house. Now, he's working in NOKIA for 2 years. In the company, you can find him conducting trainings, facilitating Scrum Master's community of practice, or playing poker, planning poker. What developer and psychologist have in common? It depends. Michał, the stage is yours.
Whoa. Well, that was a lovely introduction, and indeed, that's me, Michał. I'm a Scrum Master, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about our minds and why sometimes common sense doesn't make sense. So let me start with a dad joke, so please fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a crazy ride. That was a dad joke, thank you. If there's anything that I want you to remember from today's talk, there will be 3 key messages. The first one, The way how our brain is wired, it's a result of thousands of years of evolution. And it was shaped in a completely different environment for different challenges where surviving strategies were promoted. Then, we might feel good with the wrong answers, and those are called cognitive biases. And by the end, we can't change the way how our mind, how our brain process the informations, but we can reflect on that and therefore make better decisions. So I said, let me start with a dad joke, but indeed now is the time to truly start this talk. So the question for you, and feel free to say it out loud. Do you want to play a game? Yeah, very well. Hi there. Very well. The rules are pretty simple. I just want you to answer to the question as soon as it's possible. It's a short riddle. It comes from the American context. It's going to be about baseball. So, you ready? Yeah, that's cool, because me too. So, a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. And now the question, how much does the ball cost? Oh, come on, you knew it before. I knew it. Why I knew it? Because you have a great abilities for critical and logical thinking. That's your job. But yes, that's the correct answer. Usually, the people are answering 10 cents. Why? Because it's intuitive answer. It's the first answer that shows up in our minds. So you know the math behind that. So $1.05 is exactly $1 more than 5 cents. That's brilliant. So now let's have a look on something else, the same problem from different angle. Like we already here got like great audience that know the answers, but roughly 30% of undergraduates in United States from different universities, they give the right answer only in 30%. I mean, 30% of them gives the right answer. So then there is a question, like Backstreet Boys loves to ask this question, tell me why. So let's start with an explanation from a biological point of view. So let's start with a lovely device. That's device. It's called central nervous system, or just simple brain. It's a great example of evolution, where we can find the oldest part of the brain in here, and then the further we go with evolution, the newest are here. So it processes a lot of information over 24 hours. It is estimated that there are around 70,000 thoughts a day. You might be curious how they measure that. Of course, they haven't asked like, hey, how many thoughts you have per day? Because it doesn't work like that. They were just checking the neural impulses that are traveling through our brain. So yes, that's a lot to do. Like I mentioned, this part of the brain, the newest one, is responsible for the higher cognitive processes, for our understanding of difficult, complex problems, for logical thinking and critical thinking. Also, for controlling ourselves, for controlling our impulses. You might be curious, I believe, you might be curious how much energy it consumes. The answer is simple, a lot, but how much indeed? So the brain itself weighs about 1/50 of the whole body weight, but it consumes 1/5 of overall energy. So as you can imagine, every activity that will help us to reduce this number of calories that are consumed, it's highly valuable. So we have 70,000 thoughts over the day. We are constantly processing if we are safe. Yeah, that's a fun fact. The brain is not created to think. It's created, it's developed to help us to survive. And it's the main goal. Thinking is just a feature of the brain. So let's see how this thinking process looks like. And I'm going to use for the explanation dual thinking theory or dual system thinking. It depends. There are a couple of theories that describes that. As you know, that it's a 5 cents. Perhaps you also know what's the part of dual thinking theory. So don't be surprised. There are two systems. System one, it's mostly unconscious. So the thoughts are simply traveling through our minds, perceiving the reality. If I see the speeding car towards me, I know I need to jump. I don't need to think about that, simply doing that. If someone asks me, hey, Michael, what's 2 plus 2? I'm just giving the answer because it's 4. Ha, great. So system one is really fast. It just simply gives the answer to us. It's really intuitive. It's effortless. You don't need to think about something which you even don't know you're thinking about because system one is unconscious. But there are more difficult questions than 2 plus 2. Like, for example, how much is 17 times 24? Please don't think about that now because you will stop listening to me and you will focus on that question. And indeed, that's the system two that is responsible for more critical and logical thinking. It also consumes much more energy, and comparing to system one is much slower. So on one hand, it can help us to create 5G, like here in Nokia, or can help us to send 4G to the moon. But on the other hand, it consumes a lot of energy and it's just simply slow. We need to, and now pay attention to what I'm going to say. We need to pay attention, which means the amount of attention that we have is limited. So we cannot focus on too many things from a system 2 point of view to process them. We have a tendency then to forget or to omit some other piece of information. And the best example of that situation is that meme. So when you're turning down the radio to see better, anytime I'm driving a car and my sister is sitting next to me, she's laughing at me. Oh, you did it again. You turned the radio down to see better. And indeed, I've done that on purpose because I need to reduce the amount of information for my brain to process and to better focus on the right task at that time. Very well. So we, at the moment, we have a good view. There are two systems. One is like checking it all the time. When there is a need, the system 2 is activated. So we are doing well. Yes, system 2 always know when to act. Is it true? Not always, because system 2 acts as a lazy controller. So it's looking for information from system 1 that's if everything is going according to the plan and some action is required, or no, there are some, no, what I said already, sorry, once again. So if everything is all right and no actions are required, and no, there are some difficulties, system 2, we need you. So, sorry, there was a spoiler alert. You already saw the question. I hope you haven't read it, but maybe your system 2 already did. Anyway, so let's see if we can detect the violation of the process. How many of each type of animal did Moses take on the ark? Any ideas? Okay, because you know it. Yeah, but that's true. The correct answer is 0. Why? Because it wasn't Moses who built the ark and took the animals. It was Noah. So what happened here? Our system 2 was activated, indeed, and was trying to find the right answer, but for the wrong question. So what we can do with that? We need to trigger somehow the system 2 to act on the right question. So now let's have a look. There is another trigger. So how many of each type of animal did Musk, the Elon Musk, you know this guy, take on the ark? Oh, 0, because he haven't built any. Unless you know about any ark made by Musk, then let me know, please. Right. So what's then? It's our ability to reflect that there is an intuitive answer that arises, and it arises all the time. Those of you who said it's a 5 cents, at the beginning there is an answer that it says it's a 10 cents, but then we add another layer of thinking to process the question. And the cognitive reflection test, it's a really good tool to check our ability to reflect on the task, to detect defects in the thinking and address it in a correct manner. So you might be curious, what is that test about? Is it really complicated? Are there any special devices to check our ability to think? So the test itself is really easy. There are three questions. You already know one, because the first question I asked you at the beginning, I mean the second question. The first one was about if you want to play a game. So the riddle I asked you is exactly one item from that test. There are two more, and that's it. And it checks our ability to detect inconsistency and in thinking. So you might say, hey mate, but you showed us. Now we can't take this test any longer because we know the answers. It's not necessarily true. The test is robust to multiple exposures, which means if you don't have a reflection, the cognitive reflection, even after, if you make the test after a long time, you won't notice that there is something wrong with an answer, and you will say anyway, it's a 10 cents. It's a 10 cents for the ball. I was conducting once an experiment, a short survey. We were checking, the effect of sunk cost effect when we have a tendency to continue unprofitable actions, and we wanted to check if there is any connection between cognitive reflection test and the sunk cost effect. That was around 3 years ago, and after the survey was spread all around the people, they started to texting me. Hey, Michał, but there is a question from a TV series, from Ślepnąc od świateł. The Polish audience may know that. And that was exactly the same question, so I knew how to answer. So that's okay, because the prior belief helped you to detect inconsistency in thinking. So it's all right. I'm glad that you saw that, because it means you are not rely too much on your system 2, on your system 1, and you activated some critical thinking. Because you reflect, you know that from somewhere. So let's have a look how prior beliefs can help us to detect inconsistency in thinking. It's a pretty fresh, 2014 was already 9 years ago. So it's not that fresh, but it was a short experiment on prior beliefs and our ability to detect inconsistencies. As you can see, it's the modified version of a bat and a ball problem. Again, we have a $190,000 and $100,000. So the intuitive answer arises. It's a 90,000, and the prior beliefs that researchers use in that case is our belief about which cars are expensive, which category of cars are expensive and luxurious, and which are known as being more like a cheap city cars, etc. So the differences between those two. In that manner, both of Rolls-Royce and the Ferrari, they are luxurious, expensive cars. So when you give the answer, it's a 90,000 for Ferrari in that particular case, you see just a 10,000 difference between them, and it's like, okay, they are both expensive. I don't care. It's all right. But then let's switch it a little bit, and we have a Ferrari and we have a Ford. Ford K, it's a lovely city car. Then again, the intuitive answer arises. It's a 90,000. Only 10,000 difference between a Ferrari, this Italian luxury car, a sport car, and just a little one city car. How come? So then you can add some additional thinking processes and reflect. Oh, indeed, it's only 45,000 for Ford K. So that can help us to detect the inconsistencies. You might be curious, okay, Michał, but you already said about that there are 2 experiments. Are there any difference in the results? And yet there are some. So in the first case, with the Rolls-Royce and the Ferrari, there was only 14% of the correct answers. In that case, we got 25%. It's not a big thing, but it's honest work, so people got better with that. Yeah, lovely. So what else can help us? What can help system 1 to detect some inconsistencies or the system 2 is needed? So it's in cognitive ease. So the level of easiness that we can perceive the informations from a book, from all around, from the talks like this. If I'm saying something wrong, then you must focus more, and you are going to cognitive strain, and you must be, more engaged. So you are more critical. So it's better for me to be clear and easygoing. Anyway, cognitive ease, it's a spectrum from easy to strain. So when we are in a cognitive ease mode, we are perceiving things as just easygoing, don't need to focus. So when you check in TikTok, it's like, funny, good, and you don't need to think much. But when you start reading a piece of documentation, the old code from the repository, you're like, what's going on here? You need to focus, and it's an unpleasant feeling, You are trying to avoid that. You start to procrastinate. So yes, we have a tendency to look for the easier things. And it's a great indicator for System 1 to engage System 2. If things like difficult things happen, then we must act. I mean, this part of brain of mind. Very well. So what may influence as perceiving something as easy one? So those are positive feelings. But before I'll dive really deeper into the positive feelings, at first we need to align with the feelings itself, with the emotions. So emotions, feelings, they are the messengers for our mind, for our bodies, for ourselves, that everything is fine when we face the positive emotions. Oh, I'm feeling good. It means my needs are fulfilled. My belly is happy. In Italian, there will be la mia pancina è felice. And, life is brilliant. You don't need to focus because there are no danger in an environment. When we face some difficult emotions, which are also known as negative emotions, then there is an information, I need to act. I need to act somehow to fulfill my needs. I'm hungry. I need to eat, for example. So when we perceive, when we feel the positive emotions, we are also in so there is no challenge to face. I can calm down. So when I'm going to the shop, I'm really happy because I met such a beautiful girl already. Oh, and this jacket cost, I don't know the context. From which countries are you? Because so we have a Poland. Any other countries? I mean, I'm talking about the currency. Okay, doesn't matter. Yeah. So just for you to know, let's say 4,000 zloty for a jacket. It's an expensive jacket already. All right. So that's the case, and you are already feeling positive, and you see that, and it's like, okay, I'm good with that. I can buy it. I don't need to involve more thinking processes. So because of the positive feelings, you perceive it as a easy thing. If you will be in a negative mode, mood, most likely you will say like, how come 4,000 for a jacket? That's already expensive. People are dying. It's unfair to pay so much for that. So yes, critical thinking help us to involve. Negative feelings help us to involve critical thinking because it's needed to survive. And as I said at the beginning, the brain, the mind is not here to think, it's here to help us survive. So there is one indicator that can influence the cognitive ease. There is another thing, which is mere exposure effect. So the more we see something, the more positive we feel with that. Simple as that, truly. So let me ask you another question. What do you think about those words? Are they positive, negative? Yeah, very well. That's the right answer. Because they don't have any meaning. Those words doesn't exist. I mean, they are printed here. I mean, they're here, but they have no meaning. They were created on purpose. They're supposed to sound like Turkish, something like that, but there is no meaning behind them. And why I'm telling you about the words? Because they were used in an experiment made by Robert Zions. Robert Zions is also the author of Mere Exposure Effect. Just in case, Robert Zions is an American psychologist. and it's not Zions by O, it's Zions by O-N. If you want to check it in the future. So what is the experiment about? So Robert Zions bought a series of advertisements in a local newspaper. On the front page there was a frame, and he was printing, I mean not him, but the newspaper, they were printing some of those words. Some of the words were printed almost every day, while the other like once in a while. Some of them not printed at all. As you can imagine, people around were curious, like, hey, what's this advertisement about? They said the author wants to be anonymous. Okay, fair enough. Questions no more. After a while, he asked his students to come to the university, and said, "Hey, I got the survey for you. Okay, please rank the words from the most positive to the less positive. Is it okay for you?" They said, "Okay, it's positive." So. So they ranked the words from the most positive to the lower positive, to the less positive. And believe me or not, remember that these words has no meaning. The words that were printed the most were assessed as a positive ones. Lovely, ain't it? It's enough to see. You don't need to understand. And why? These guys know the answer. Because they don't know how to talk, but they need to survive in a challenging environment. Everything could kill you. It might be an animal, it might be a plant. So better be ready for a death. So you are approaching everything with cautious. But if after several of encounters, this animal haven't ate me, I'm still alive, it means it's good. So I can approach very well. So our basic approach is to avoid, to be skeptical, and then the more we see something, the safer we feel with that. So the positive emotion arises. Everything is perfect. It works not only for human, but also for animals. But then I realized we are animals as well. So it works for all of us. Lovely. What else can affect our feeling, our perceiving of cognitive ease? I mean, that we feel ease with the things that we perceive. It's a graphic layout. So you might be curious, why those guys from UX design, they are so needed on the market? Simply because they're letting people not to think when they perceive informations. So the better they create the layout, the less chances are that people will be the people will be forced to think, and most likely they will buy the product. Simple as that. So the easier it is to perceive the information, the less chances are that we'll consciously think about them. And then, can you remember from schools those xerocopies from your teachers when there were the exams and you had to, put a lot of effort into understanding? Perhaps they helped our grades. Of course, in the case when we prepared for the exam, but forcing our attention, our cognitive effort to understand what is written down here helps us as well to detect our own mistakes. So most likely, in some percentage, we got better grades. Don't you believe me? I have a proof for that. So again, about the cognitive reflection test and a student. So there were 40 students. They were given the cognitive reflection test on a 2 version. One was really nicely printed. Yeah, so the font size was easy to read. The color of the font was black, so the contrast, everything, just a regular thing. While the other group received it on this Mr. Incredible, so the font was slightly smaller, still possible to read. It was smaller and the color was grayish-like. What were the results? So from the first group, easy to read, 95% of all 20 students made at least one mistake. From the other group, the xerocopy group, let's call them, only 65%, 65 is somewhere else, sorry. 35% made at least one mistake. So most likely it helped. But of course, we need some further investigation. Good. So you may think they'll be nice to control at all the time our cognitive processes. All right, there is a thought. Is it correct or not? We might try, but this will lead us to what's called ego depletion. It's a term crafted by Ron Baumeister, and he stated that we have a limited amount of willpower, of self-control. So the longer we are trying to control our actions, the more tired we are with that, and therefore, when we are tired, we have a tendency to rely more on our intuitive answers. And examples, there you are. So you already had a difficult day at work. There were a lot of meetings. You had to make a lot of not mistakes, but decisions. Decisions, that's the word. You had to make a lot of decisions. You were about to control yourself because, oh no, I can't act like unprofessional, so I'll be, like ready for everything. So chances are that if you are on a diet, you'll go back home and don't have any more energy to control yourself and just simply break your diet. And there is another lovely experiment on that. It was a natural experiment. No judges were injured. So it's about hungry judges. They were observed during the day. They were making the decisions if they can release the prisoners. So there were 8 of the judges, not the prisoners. The average number of positive verdicts was around 35%, and there were the breaks in the meantime, so the time when they can recharge their batteries, eat something, relax, just simply take care of them and take care of themselves. And then after the break, the number of positive results went up to 65%. Why is that so? That's important. Because by default, so the intuitive thinking here is, oh no, we can't release the prisoners. That's pretty obvious. We are looking for, we are not going to look for the reasons to release them because it's additional effort, and simply because we want to keep the prisoners in a prison. So additional thinking is needed to prove that they can be released. So after the break, when they are fulfilled, they can be involved in a more critical, logical thinking. But right before the break, when they were tired, the number of the positive verdicts went to 0%. Sounds scary, isn't it? Like we need to rely on people who are hungry and they make the unlogical decisions. Luckily, it's not that bad. I found the other research from this year, and it seems the numbers shouldn't be that, apart from each other. That's at first. And they explain the results, this result, as a way how they scheduled, each cases. So the more difficult cases were scheduled at the beginning, and the easy one, that they know that the prisoners shouldn't be released, were left for the time before the break. So it's not that bad in the end. Alrighty, so what can we do with that? We already know that there are 2 systems, that we perceive something as easy on some unconscious, on a subconscious reasons. It doesn't need to be easy. In fact, it's just the way how we perceive it. What's more important when we talk about the cognitive reflection test, let me come back to that for a few seconds. There were around 3,000 people involved during creation of that method. And the participants were split into 2 groups, generally into 2 groups. One that made the right decisions, while the other that made all the decisions wrong. So in all the 3 questions, right answer, in all the 3 questions, wrong answers. And both of the groups were asked, hey, how easy was the test? So the group that made a lot of mistakes, 95% of them stated, oh, that was easy one, pretty good. While the other group that made the right decisions, they said, it was easy, but only 65% from that group stated. We even don't know when we are wrong, when we rely too much on a system one. So what can we do with that? It's like this optical illusion. We can't get over it. Even if I'll tell you the exact length of those two lines, our brains will still perceive it as a shorter and a longer one. So we need to simply acknowledge it. All right, it is as it is. The intuitive answers are arising in my mind. I know about that. So what's then? I need to give myself a little bit time to digest the information deeply, to spend some time on a reasoning, the proper reasoning, and also ask myself, okay, I feel good with the answer. Is it because I'm in a good mood? Is it the result of the cognitive ease? Was it printed on a lovely paper? Or, you know, good. And like that, we are going to an end of that talk. And if there is anything that I want you to remember from that talk, there'll be the three things. The first one, that the brain is a result of thousands of years of evolution, and it was shaped in a completely different environment for different challenges. The brain here is not to think, it's to help us to survive. Thinking is just the feature. Feeling good with the wrong answers are the cognitive biases. And we can't change the way how our brain works, but we can reflect on that and therefore try to make the better decisions. And by the end, that's the resources I used for preparation. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Much for our really interesting story and research-based presentation. So now it's time for questions and answers. So if you have a question, then please raise your hand.
Oh no, I'm afraid.
Yes, it won't be a hard one. Thank you.
Oh my. Go ahead.
So you just talk about that having a negative effect in a day that can be advantageous for our critical thinking. That means if I feel bad every day, that's good for my work.
If you what?
If I feel bad every day, that's good for my work, or some negative exposure.
Oh yeah, I got your point. So
I don't say that I'm depressed, but I feel bad.
Yeah.
For good reasons. That can be a thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is obvious. It depends. Depends on what. So the power of the negative feelings, because it's good to feel it, but it's not good when it takes over the control. So when there is the slides with the brain, sorry about that. Yeah, when there is, we can't see that here, but in somewhere around here there is the part of the brain called amygdala, responsible for perceiving emotions, for feeling emotions, and it can somehow steal your brain. So the prefrontal cortex is not thinking any longer because the mind is occupied by negative thoughts, by negative emotions. So then it's difficult. But when you are not in a positive feelings itself, there are more chances that you will be able to focus. So what I want to say, it's good to acknowledge the difficult feelings, to say, okay, I am sad, that's all right, I'm feeling that, but I can focus on a task. So you can focus deeply. When you are happy, most likely you are like a careless, so then it's also difficult to focus. I'm not sure if I answered that question enough.
Yeah, I think I understand. So it's like it's stress, so we have to know that it can help us.
Yes. So with the stress, when it's too high, because stress itself is good for us because it's mobilizes us. But when it's too high, then you are in a flight or flight mode, and you see just like that, or even like that. You're just trying to escape from a dangerous situation. When you feel the stress, you are, oh, nice, sharp and easy, and then you can deal with problems. So it's there to help.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mamma mia.
Joo.
Good.
Yeah, so I really like books about people behaviors and habits. One of my favorites ones are the Atomic Habits and the Power of Habit. You know them?
I don't know. And I also know that there is a book called How to Talk About the Books that you haven't read, but I haven't read it, so it's difficult for me to talk about that.
Okay, so the point is in these books they're talking about the atomic habits, yeah? So the little habits that we can change in order to change our bigger habits. So how does this connect with what you just said?
That's a great question, and indeed I was about to say that, but I forgot. So I'm really glad
You're
that you
welcome.
ask. So yeah, our brain have a tendency to optimize operations. So anytime it can, if anything could be, repeated, it can be a habit. It doesn't cost us more energy. Then it's beneficial for us for our survival. So yes, it's our natural tendency to have repeated actions. When you talk, when you ask about the habits, for example, so it's strongly rooted into how it's called the evolution of brain, and also the way how we perceive the informations. Thank you.
So, any practical tips how to work with software developers
Yes,
and
indeed.
use this knowledge?
Yes, great. So, as I said about the ego depletion, so if we are not feeling safe in our team, for example, if we need to control ourselves at all the time, we can't be authentic. We also reduce our capacity for deeper thinking then, because we need to allocate our mental energy into some other actions. So it's good to create good teams where you can feel right with your people, when you can be wrong, when you can give the wrong answers, because then it's then you feel all right with that. So you don't feel that much stress, which is related to your question. It is not overwhelming you. You can detect the answers, and when you are in a good team, when you just accept like, oh, we are different, I can say something wrong, you can correct me, you can detect my cognitive bias, and it's right. So the more we are like when we are in a team, we can detect ourselves the cognitive biases in our own minds. We can spend more time on the right work, not to prove that I can be the part of the group. And therefore, I want to say something about my teams. So I'm really great to be the part of 2 of my teams, because they also showed me my cognitive biases, which I'm really grateful for. Because yeah, strongly I rely on my intuitive thinking, but those great guys from both of my teams helps me a lot to detect it. So thank you guys, and thank you for the question. If it's answered that, great.
I will not ask a question, but just to share a technique that we already discussed before your presentation, so it a little bit answers both of your question. Also, if you have a time, just wait. Write one answer for the question, get off it for 10 minutes, then get back to it, read it once again, and ask yourself, is it the answer that you would like to share? Then leave it for some time, get back to it, and once again, ask yourself, if this is the real answer that you would like to give. And if all the trees are yes, then yes, this is the good answer. But if you are changing the answer, most probably you are still in the feelings, not in the facts.
I also have one question.
Oh,
Because you said that
hi.
one fifth of the total energy is consumed by brain.
Yeah.
So the question is, the more we think, the more energy we consume, and we can be on a thinking diet.
That's a good point. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, like how many calories are needed, but you may experience that when you really focus on something, when you engage system 2, the logical thinking, then more processes are needed to be created. And there are the lovely picture of that when the new neurons are trying to connect each other. So to build something new, the energy is also needed. So yes, when we are thinking about something new, when we are in a creative creative modes, when we trying to solve the problems, then most likely we'll consume more energy. But I can't tell you how much exactly because I don't know the data for now. But I will check it later on and just answer myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any other question?
I can clap for you too. You are great.
Okay, so thank you very much for a really interesting presentation.
Thank you.